The year was 1945. World War II was finally over. Everyone was happy. People danced in the streets. The bad guys were gone. But there was a small problem. Actually, it was a big problem. There were two big winners in the war. One was the United States of America. The other was the Soviet Union. They were on the same team during the war. They fought together to stop Hitler. But they were not really friends. They were more like two people who work together but don't like each other. Imagine two strong men. They shake hands. They smile. But behind their backs, they are holding rocks. They do not trust each other. Why? Because they thought very differently. The USA believed in capitalism. This means people can own businesses. You can make money. You can buy what you want. You can say what you want. The USSR believed in communism. This means the government owns everything. There are no rich people and no poor people. Everyone shares. The government tells you what to do. The USA said, "Our way is the best. Everyone should be free." The USSR said, "No, our way is the best. Everyone should be equal." The leader of the USSR was Joseph Stalin. He was a tough man. He had a big mustache, and he was very scary. He did not trust the USA. The leader of the USA was Harry Truman. He did not trust Stalin. The war ended, but a new fight began. They did not use guns yet. They used words and fear. This was the start of the Cold War. Why was it cold? Because it never got hot. The two big countries never fought a direct battle. If they fought, it would be a hot war. But they stayed angry and cold for a very long time. Chapter 2. The Iron Curtain. Stalin looked at a map of Europe. He was worried. Germany had attacked Russia twice in 30 years. He did not want that to happen again. So Stalin had an idea. He said, "I want a buffer zone." A buffer zone is like a shield. Stalin took his army into countries near Russia. He went into Poland, Hungary, Romania, and others. He did not leave. He told these countries, "Congratulations, you are now friends with the USSR. You are communist now." The people in those countries said, "Do we have a choice?" Stalin said, "No." So half of Europe became communist. They had to listen to Moscow. In the West, the USA and Britain were worried. Winston Churchill was a famous British leader. He traveled to America. He gave a famous speech. He said, "An iron curtain has come down across Europe." An iron curtain is not a real curtain. You cannot buy it at a store. It was a line. On one side, people were free. On the other side, people were under Stalin's control. Nobody could cross the line. You could not travel. You could not see your family. It was a prison for half of Europe. The USA wanted to stop this. They did not want communism to spread. They wanted to help the other countries stay free. So the USA did something nice. They gave away money. A lot of money. This was called the Marshall Plan. They said to Europe, "Here is money. Please rebuild your cities, buy food, build factories, but please do not become communist." The countries in Western Europe said, "Wow, thank you." They took the money, they bought food, they built houses. They liked the USA. Stalin was angry. He said to his countries, "You cannot take the money. It is a trick." So Europe was cut in two. The West was rich and free. The East was poor and controlled. The two sides stared at each other. They were ready for trouble. Chapter 3. The Berlin Crisis. Germany was the biggest problem. After the war, the winners divided Germany into 4 parts. The USA, Britain, and France took the west part. The USSR took the east part. The capital city was Berlin. Berlin was deep inside the Soviet part. But the city was also divided into 4 parts. It was very confusing. The USA, Britain, and France wanted to help Germany. They introduced new money. Shops started to open. People were happy in West Germany. Stalin did not like this. He wanted Germany to be weak. He wanted them to pay for the war. In 1948, Stalin made a move. He looked at West Berlin. It was an island of freedom in his communist sea. He said, "I will cut it off." He blocked all the roads. He blocked all the trains. No food could get into West Berlin. No coal, no medicine, nothing. Stalin thought, "They will run out of food. Then they will surrender. West Berlin will be mine." The people in West Berlin were scared. They had food for only 1 month. But the USA and Britain said, "We will not give up." They could not drive trucks. Stalin would shoot them. So they looked at the sky. "We will fly," they said. This was the Berlin airlift. It was amazing. Planes took off from West Germany. They flew over the blocked roads. They landed in Berlin. They carried flour, milk, coal, and potatoes. At first it was hard, but soon a plane landed every 3 minutes, day and night. Zoom, land, unload, zoom. One pilot became famous. His name was Gale Halvorsen. He saw children watching the planes. They looked hungry and sad. He wanted to make them smile. He dropped chocolate and gum from his plane. He used small parachutes. The children loved him. They called him the Candy Bomber. Stalin watched the planes. He waited for them to stop. But they did not stop. They flew in winter. They flew in rain. After 1 year, Stalin gave up. He looked foolish. He opened the roads again. The West had won the first battle, but they knew Stalin was still dangerous. Chapter 4. The Big Clubs. The world was a scary place. Countries wanted friends. They wanted protection. In 1949, the USA and its friends made a club. It was called NATO. The rule of the club was simple. If you attack one of us, you attack all of us. It was like a group of friends in a schoolyard. If a bully hits one boy, 10 other boys jump in to help. The members were the USA, Canada, Britain, France, and others. They felt safer together. A few years later, the USSR made its own club. It was called the Warsaw Pact. The members were the USSR, Poland, East Germany, and others. Their rule was the same. If you hit us, we hit you. Now there were two giant teams, Team Blue, NATO, and Team Red, Warsaw Pact. Both teams started to build armies. They made tanks, they made planes, they marched in parades. They wanted to look strong. The USA said, "Look at my big army." The USSR said, "My army is bigger." This was dangerous. If one soldier shot a gun by mistake, the whole world could explode. Everyone was nervous. People read newspapers every day. They asked, "Is the war starting today?" But for a while, it was quiet. It was the quiet before a storm. Chapter 5. The Bomb. During World War II, the USA invented a terrible weapon. It was the atomic bomb. They used it on Japan. It destroyed 2 whole cities. It was the most powerful weapon in history. For a few years, only the USA had this bomb. They felt safe. They thought, "Nobody will attack us. We have the superweapon." But the USSR had spies. These spies stole the secrets. They sent the plans to Russia. In 1949, the USSR tested their own bomb. Boom! The USA was shocked. "How did they do that?" they asked. "Now we are not safe." So the USA decided to build a bigger bomb. It was called the hydrogen bomb. It was 1,000 times stronger than the first bomb. They tested it. It made a giant fireball. It was terrifying. The USSR said, "We can do that too." And they built their own hydrogen bomb. This was called the arms race. It was a race to have the most weapons. USA, "I have 100 bombs." USSR, "I have 200 bombs." USA, "Now I have 1,000 bombs." USSR, "Now I have 5,000 bombs." It was crazy. They had enough bombs to destroy the whole Earth. They could destroy the world 10 times. Why did they do this? They thought it stopped war. They had a strange idea called MAD. It stands for Mutually Assured Destruction. It means, if you kill me, I will kill you. We both die. So, neither side wanted to start a war. It was too dangerous. They just sat there with their fingers on the button, sweating. Children in schools practiced safety drills. A bell rang. The teacher shouted, "Duck and cover!" The children hid under their desks. They covered their heads. They thought this would save them from a nuclear bomb. It probably wouldn't, but it made people feel like they were doing something. Chapter 6. A Wall in the City. Let's go back to Berlin. Remember, the city was split. West Berlin was free, East Berlin was communist. In the 1950s, people in East Berlin were unhappy. They did not have good jobs. They could not buy nice things. They could not speak freely. They looked at West Berlin. It looked great. There were shiny cars. There were bananas and chocolate. There were good movies. So, people did something simple. They walked. They walked from East Berlin to West Berlin. They did not come back. Thousands of people left. Doctors, engineers, teachers, they all left the East. The leader of the USSR was now a man named Nikita Khrushchev. He was different from Stalin, but he was still tough. He said, "This is bad. We are losing all our smart people." On a Sunday morning in 1961, the people of Berlin woke up. They saw something shocking. Soldiers were everywhere. They were rolling out barbed wire. They were digging holes. They were building a wall. It went right through the middle of the city. It went through streets. It went through houses. Families were separated. A mother was in the east. Her son was in the west. They could not see each other. The wire turned into a big concrete wall. It was tall. It had guard towers. It had dogs. Soldiers stood on the wall with guns. Their orders were simple. Shoot anyone who tries to cross. This was the Berlin Wall. It became the symbol of the Cold War. It showed that the communist system had to lock people in. Some people tried to escape. They were very brave. They dug tunnels under the wall. They hid in cars. One family even made a hot air balloon. Some escaped, but many died. The wall stood there, gray and ugly, for a long time. Chapter 7. The Spies. Because they could not fight a real war, the two sides used spies. The USA had the CIA. The USSR had the KGB. It was like a movie, but it was real. Spies were everywhere. They worked in embassies. They worked in the army. They pretended to be regular people. A man might be a friendly neighbor. He mows his lawn. He says hello. But at night, he takes photos of secret documents. They used cool gadgets. They had cameras hidden in pens. They had microphones in shoes. They had umbrellas that could shoot poison. The spies wanted to know, what is the enemy planning? Where are their missiles? Who is a traitor? Sometimes they caught spies. It was big news. "We caught a Russian spy," the USA would say. "We caught an American spy," the USSR would say. Sometimes they did a trade. They met on a bridge in Berlin. It was foggy and dark. One side brought a prisoner. The other side brought a prisoner. They walked past each other. "Goodbye," said the spy. "Good luck," said the other spy. It was a secret war in the shadows. Nobody knew who to trust. Chapter 8. The Space Race. The fight wasn't just on Earth. It went to the stars. The USA and USSR wanted to prove who was smarter. They wanted to show their technology was the best. This was the space race. In 1957, the USSR won the first round. They launched a small metal ball into space. It was called Sputnik. It went beep, beep, beep as it flew around the Earth. The Americans looked up. They were scared. If they can put a ball over our heads, they thought, they can drop a bomb on our heads. The USA tried to launch a rocket. It exploded on the ground. Boom. It was embarrassing. The USSR laughed. Then they did something even better. They sent a man into space. His name was Yuri Gagarin. He was the first human to leave Earth. He flew around the world and came back safely. He was a hero. The USA was losing. The president was John F. Kennedy. He was young and handsome. He didn't like losing. He went on TV. He said, "We will go to the moon." People said, "That is impossible." Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard." The USA spent billions of dollars. They built huge rockets. They studied hard. In 1969, 3 American astronauts climbed into a rocket. Their names were Neil, Buzz, and Michael. They flew to the moon. Neil Armstrong climbed down the ladder. He stepped onto the dusty ground. He said, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The USA had won the space race. They put a flag on the moon. The USSR never went to the moon. They said, "We didn't want to go anyway," but they were secretly jealous. Chapter 9. The Most Dangerous Days. The scariest moment of the Cold War happened in 1962. It was called the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba is a lovely island near the USA. It has nice beaches and good sugar. But in 1959, a man named Fidel Castro took over Cuba. He had a big beard and he smoked cigars. He was a communist. The USA did not like having a communist neighbor. Cuba is very close to Florida. You can almost swim there. The USA tried to get rid of Castro. It failed. Castro was scared. He called the USSR for help. He said, "Hey, Khrushchev, the Americans want to kill me." Khrushchev said, "Don't worry, I will send you some gifts." The gifts were nuclear missiles. The USSR put missiles on ships. They sent them to Cuba. They started building launch sites. An American spy plane flew over Cuba. The pilot took photos. When President Kennedy saw the photos, he turned pale. "These missiles can hit Washington in 5 minutes," his generals said. "We must attack Cuba." Kennedy said, "If we attack Cuba, the Russians will attack us. It will be World War III." For 13 days, the world held its breath. People bought canned food. They prayed. They thought the end was coming. Kennedy did something smart. He did not attack. He used his ships to block Cuba. He said to the Russians, "Turn your ships around." The Russian ships came closer. The American ships waited. It was a game of chicken. Who would turn away first? At the last minute, the Russian ships turned around. Khrushchev sent a letter to Kennedy. He said, "I will take the missiles back, but you must promise not to invade Cuba." Kennedy said, "Deal." The missiles left Cuba. The world breathed again. Phew! That was close. Chapter 10. War in the Jungle. The big countries were too scared to fight each other, so they fought in other places. This is called a proxy war. It's like when two people make their dogs fight. One big war was in Vietnam. Vietnam was divided, just like Germany. North Vietnam was communist. South Vietnam was not. The North wanted to take over the South. The USA said, "No way." The USA sent soldiers to help the South. First a few thousand, then 500,000. It was a terrible war. It was in the jungle. It was hot and rainy. The enemy hid in tunnels and trees. The American soldiers could not find them. The USA had big planes and bombs, but the North Vietnamese fighters were tough. They would not give up. People in America saw the war on TV. They saw sad things. They saw dead soldiers. They started to protest. Young people marched in the streets. They shouted, "Make love, not war." The USA fought for many years. Many people died. But they could not win. Finally, in 1973, the USA went home. 2 years later, the North won. Vietnam became one communist country. It was a sad loss for the USA. It showed that having big bombs doesn't mean you always win. The USSR also had a bad war. They invaded a country called Afghanistan. It was just like Vietnam, but in the mountains. The Russian tanks broke down. The Afghan fighters hid in caves. The Russians fought for 10 years. They lost too. Both sides learned a lesson. Invading other countries is a bad idea. Chapter 11. Relaxing a little. After all this fighting and fear, everyone was tired. In the 1970s, the leaders decided to relax. This was called détente. It is a French word. It means calming down. The American president was Richard Nixon. He visited Moscow. He shook hands with the Soviet leader. They smiled. They drank champagne. They signed papers. They said, "Let's limit our missiles. We have too many." They started to trade. The USA sold wheat to Russia. Russia sold vodka to the USA. For a while, things looked better. But they were still not real friends. They just stopped shouting for a bit. Chapter 12. The Wall Falls Down. In the 1980s, the USSR started to have problems. Big problems. Their economy was broken. People stood in line for hours to buy bread. The shops were empty. The factories were old. People were unhappy. They looked at the West on TV. They saw blue jeans, rock music, and full supermarkets. They wanted that too. A new leader came to power in the USSR. His name was Mikhail Gorbachev. He was different. He was younger. He had a strange red mark on his head. And he had new ideas. He saw that his country was failing. He said, "We need to change." He gave the people two new words. One, glasnost. You can speak the truth. You will not go to jail. Two, perestroika. We will fix the economy. You can own a small business. He thought he was saving communism, but he was actually killing it. Once people tasted freedom, they wanted more. In 1989, things went crazy. Countries like Poland and Hungary started to protest. They said, "We don't want to be communist anymore." In the old days, the USSR would send tanks. But Gorbachev said, "I will not send tanks. You can choose what you want." The people were shocked. "Really?" "Yes," said Gorbachev. Then something amazing happened in Berlin. It was November 9th, 1989. An official in East Germany was giving a boring press conference. He was reading a paper about travel rules. A reporter asked, "When can people travel to the West?" The official was confused. He looked at his papers. He mumbled, well, as far as I know, immediately." He didn't mean to say that, but it was on live TV. Thousands of people in East Berlin heard it. They ran to the wall. "Open the gate!" they shouted. "The man on TV said we can go." The guards were confused. They called their boss. The boss didn't answer. The crowd got bigger. Finally, the guards shrugged. Whatever, they thought. And they opened the gates. People poured through. They cried. They hugged strangers. People from West Berlin came to help. They climbed on top of the wall. They danced. They brought hammers. Smash, smash, smash. They broke the wall. The symbol of the Cold War was gone. The world watched on TV and cheered. Chapter 13. The End of the Story. After the wall fell, everything happened very fast. The communist countries in Europe became free. They held elections. They chose new leaders. Germany became one country again. Friends reunited. Families reunited. And what about the USSR? It fell apart. Different parts of the giant country wanted to be free. Ukraine, Latvia, Estonia. They all said, "We are leaving." Gorbachev tried to keep it together, but it was too late. On Christmas Day, 1991, Gorbachev went on TV. He looked sad. He resigned. The red flag of the Soviet Union came down from the Kremlin in Moscow. A new flag went up, the flag of Russia. The Soviet Union was gone. The Cold War was over. It lasted for more than 40 years. It cost trillions of dollars. It scared millions of people. But in the end, it didn't end with a bang. It ended with a whisper. The USA was the only superpower left. The world changed. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems. But the big fear of a nuclear end was gone. And hopefully, we learned a lesson. Building walls is easy, but building bridges is much better.